Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below. Your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any of our platforms, please reach out to me. I am tmosso@thewatchbox.com for pricing. Today we're discussing a model launched in 2019. This is the Omega Seamaster Diver 300-meter chronograph. It's 44 millimeters in diameter in a combination of Sedna red gold and stainless steel. The watch is a beefy 17.5 millimeters thick, and from lug tip to lug tip, it is 52.5 millimeters across the wrist with a 21 millimeter spacing between the lugs. I'm going to zoom out a little bit because this is a watch that needs to be seen in proportion to the rest of my arm. I can wear this, but I do believe that 16 centimeters circumference is the smallest wrist that should wear this. I have a 16 centimeter wrist. You can see from over the top, the lugs are out to the edge of my wrist, and even down the barrel, you can see those lugs are getting pretty darn close to the edges. Not quite there, but close. So if your wrist were smaller, you'd have lug overlap. When the lug is overhanging the edge of your wrist, the watch is too big. So that's my guidance for you. You can see the cuff shot proves this is a very thick watch, and then down the barrel gives you a sense of just how close I am to the limit of what's possible. But it is a wonderfully made watch. You really get a sense that it's almost like it were carved from a solid ingot of metal. There's almost no lateral play in the bracelet. It's meaty and feels indestructible. And that's not just because of the inclusion of gold. The steel parts are made that well. There's a little bit of an integration of the bracelet to the case with a conforming end link. We have the latest version of a bracelet that first debuted back in 1993 on the first Diver 300 meter. At the time, it was a bit of a hybrid of a sports bracelet and a dress bracelet, and that was really hammered home by the fact that the original shoulder links had a sort of rolled camber or tumble home. They would slope off to the side. That made it look a little bit dressier, along with the polished intermediates. You can see today that the edge is very squared off, so you don't have that rolling of the link off to the side, so this looks a little bit sportier. We have a combination of staggered link size, alignment, finish, and material. We have Ever Rose style, Sedna red gold. If you're wondering what Ever Rose is, it is Rolex's red gold that never fades. If you're wondering what Sedna is, it's Omega's version of Ever Rose. So it has a high percentage of copper to make it redder, and then a higher percentage of palladium so it won't fade. Removable links are fixed by screws, and you can see there's a little intermediate size link on both sides. In case you wind up in between sizes, you can take out those little intermediates to make it easier to get the right match. Now here we have a slider built in, so you have about 9.6, 9.7 millimeters of push-button slidable adjustment. So those are incremental adjustments. This is not. This is the big, meaty, machined fold-out swing arm that made the original Diver 300 meter famous in the 90s. A serious dive extension. It feels as redoubtable as every other part of this watch. Now, once you're done, you can just snap it back into place internally. And we have a thick gauge clasp and a thick gauge single fold deploy in action. You can see externally the engraving is still very deep and sharp. This has all appearances of having never been refinished. Twin trigger release, you have to press both to pop this open. It's not going to pop open inadvertently. We have a case that should be familiar to Omega fans. You know, lyre style lugs, beveled on the inner face, beveled on the outer face. We have a helium escape valve. For this generation of the watch, it can now be opened while you're underwater. If you're a saturation diver, you can open that to relieve any helium that may build up in the watch during your dive. So once this is open, when the internal pressure exceeds external pressure by 2 to 3 bar, that valve that sits underneath this conical crown, that will open up and release the helium so you don't blow out the seals and the sapphires. Here we have ceramic pushers with shoulders in fluted rose gold. We have a screw down crown in rose gold, all this 300 meters water resistant. We have a Sedna red gold bezel with a ceramic insert that features inlaid red gold. This is Ceragold. The materials, ceramic and gold, they can never separate. They're perma-bonded. And having this insert in ceramic along with the sapphire up top provides a scratch resistant heat shield for your watch. Let's hear the action. It's a crisp 120 click bezel. You line it up with the minute hand. Now, you can actually time 2 events, one with the chronograph, one with the dive bezel, which has a 0 to 60 minute count up option. Let's take a quick look. That count up will be judged easily as the minute hand and the bezel pearl are green, whereas the rest of the lume is blue. And you can see all the hands here are luminescent. The seconds hand is luminescent, which is important because it lets you know whether the watch is running when you're diving in low light conditions or you're about to take a dive at night. You can also see that the running seconds and the chronograph minutes are visible in the dark. The only hand not visible is chronograph hours. To keep the dial clean, Omega used a twin register layout, but with a triple register functionality. We have superimposed chronograph hours and minutes over at 3 o'clock. The dial features the much-loved Omega wave that's been on and off on the Diver 300 meter since 1993, mostly on. The only absence was 2012 to 2017. This wave-style dial is actually made of ceramic. You can see the chemical formula of ceramic below the hands. So it will resist tarnishing, color changing, water damage, oxidation over time. Basically all the advantages of enamel, but without the fragility and expense. The waves have been laser cut into the dial. We have rose gold plated indices and hands, and then you can see that the hands are skeletonized, the famous James Bond hands, as this model line, and the hands in particular were made famous during the 90s, during Pierce Brosnan's turn as 007, when 007 defected from Rolex to Omega thanks to a pile of Swiss francs, to be frank. But it has been an enduring relationship, as Bond is still wearing Omega to this day, and for the first time ever on a Seamaster collection, the Diver 300 meter design stuck over decades. Previously, the sub was always the sub, but the Seamaster would always be redesigned every decade or so at a bare minimum. So there wasn't a lot of design continuity on the Seamasters. With the Diver 300 meter, largely because of the Bond connection, it was well loved enough that it stayed in the catalog with stylistic updates, but not the full rip it up and start again philosophy Omega had previously used. Now this watch has a column wheel action for selecting the function. You can actually see through the case back because there's a skeletonization in the bridge. You can see the column wheel in action. It's a very crisp, traditional way of building a chronograph. And then there's a vertical clutch, which is the actual coupling system. And with a vertical clutch, there's no additional play or stagger to the seconds hand when you start it. That's a problem with lateral clutches that you won't find here. Another advantage of the vertical clutch is you can just leave it running without additional hazard to the watch. Reset everything. You can see those hands for the hours and minutes superimpose themselves. We've got a couple of different setting modes, one of which is the full-blown hacking second. Now when I pull that crown out all the way, note the seconds hand over at 9 o'clock is stopped. The intermediate crown position, if I want the watch to keep running, and by the way, I can have the chronograph running too. Let's say I need to change my locality and time zone. I can move the hour hand just by itself. And you'll note that I can actually drive the date wheel in both directions, depending on which way I'm passing over the international date line. On the back, the Diver 300 meter chronograph is actually a little bit more upscale than the Diver 300 meter. The Diver 300 meter uses the entry-level 8800 movement, not the upscale double barrel 8900 movement, whereas here we get the chronograph version of the 8900, which is the 9900. So bidirectional winding with twin mainspring barrels, 60-hour power reserve, column wheel, vertical clutch. You've got the hacking, the time zone function, shock resistance courtesy of a full balance bridge with a free sprung balance, and the watch is effectively amagnetic, not anti-magnetic, amagnetic to over 15,000 Gauss. Thanks to an anti-magnetic escapement, balance staff, and silicon hairspring. Because of the silicon hairspring, it beats at 25,200 vibrations per hour, which is a Swatch group-wide beat rate for silicon hairspring watches. And then we have the tri-level George Daniels envisioned coaxial escapement, which I still think is the most sophisticated escapement you can buy, certainly the most exotic for under $50,000. A double impulse escapement with direct and indirect impulse. It's different from a traditional Swiss lever in that the contact is tangential rather than sliding, which improves power reserve, reduces maintenance requirements, and works well to the benefit of chronometry. We have twin barrels here rather than one. That's not just to give you 60 hours of power reserve. 2 barrels in series with phased mainsprings ensure that the watch doesn't run super fast when fully wound or start losing time as it runs down. That's the advantage there. And this is a master chronometer. You can see it on the dial. The METAS standard, co-developed between Omega and the Swiss Federal Institute of Metrology. It is a fully cased up test of the watch. The COSC is a bare movement test. Master master chronometer is a test of the fully assembled watch, chronometry in 6 positions, not the COSC's 5, power reserve, winding efficiency. You've got the chronometry in there, shock resistance, water resistance, anti-magnetic qualities. And it's not the fox guarding the henhouse, because anyone can master chronometer certify a watch. It's not just for Omega, and Tudor has begun to do that lately. So there's a lot to love about this watch, which is simply packed with features and a sense of quality that belies its actual price. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.